signals that they're likely to reject, what did he say? Cancel the Paris Climate Agreement. So we don't know if he's actually going to do it, right? We're waiting to hear. We think very well that he might. And we're here because we care enough to try to defend this important treaty. So when we were trying to sum up, like, what is the Paris Agreement? Why does it matter? And what happens if the U.S. drops out or, fails to lead on this issue? So why care about this? So I thought I would just, give a little background, if that's useful, for a minute or two. My name is Timmons Roberts. I'm a professor at Brown University. I bring students, dozen students every year to the UN climate negotiations. We've been studying it for a long time. I've been bringing students since about 2010. I've been going to the negotiations since about 2003. And of course, the negotiations got started in about 1992 with the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It's taken a long time. It's the Paris Agreement. In a few words, it's voluntary, it's inadequate, but it's a start, right? It's voluntary. It does not require the United States to actually do any particular thing. We chose our own target, right? It's not like the UN is imposing on us targets for how much emissions we have to reduce. It's inadequate because it still leaves us with 2.5 or 3 degrees Celsius of warming, which is above the rate that's expected to have dangerous climate change. But it's a start, right? That it's more than nothing. It's more than we had before. It reduced the expected warming from 3.5 degrees to 2.5 degrees. It's supposed to be just the beginning, right? Countries are supposed to come back every 5 years with strengthened pledges on what they can do. So in the system all there is in Paris are sort of voluntary pledges. They're called nationally determined contributions. And then there's transparency mechanism. And the transparency mechanism is that countries have to report what they actually did. So the only binding part is the transparency part. So even if the U.S. did not meet our target, we would still be able to report, sorry, we didn't meet our target, and we would still be in compliance with the treaty. Countries are supposed to make stronger targets. It was started as sort of like bring what you can and do what you can and then try to make it better next time in 5 years. So that's why it just doesn't make any sense for the U.S. to pull out. It's a voluntary treaty. As I said, it's voluntary, it's inadequate, but it's a start. The U.S. leadership. The U.S. has been a laggard for most of those 25 years of the U.S. Climate change treaty making, but it's only been in the last 3 or 4 years that the U.S. has really become much better about it. That is, the Obama administration worked with China to really sort of break this impasse that a lot of other countries were saying, well, if the U.S. and China aren't doing anything, then we won't. And the U.S. Senate was saying to Congress, we won't do anything because China's emitting more than we are, so we shouldn't act. Well, the Obama administration got together with China in November of 2014, had a pretty fantastic joint announcement. They said, China said we're going to peak our emissions. They're doing better than they said they were going to do. The U.S. said we'll reduce our emissions by 26 to 28% by 2025. And so that's our target. That's what we said we're going to do. China's already met its target. It's been level for 3 years on its emissions. India's doing better than they said they were going to do. So a lot of the reasons why critics are saying that that this treaty is too hard on the U.S. or bad for the U.S. actually is not correct and it's not fair. That is, other countries are doing as much or more than they said they were going to do. So what happens if the U.S. withdraws this week? We thought it would be yesterday or today, and maybe any day now. There's sort of these factions in the White House fighting over this. If the U.S. withdraws, will the world burn? Well, we don't know, right? It depends on what the rest of the world does. Whether other countries say, well, the country that's responsible for the most greenhouse gases in the atmosphere isn't doing anything, so why should we? And by the way, they're the richest country in the world. The U.S. put 21% of all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. whereas we're only 4% of the world's population. So why would other countries act? Well, we hope that they will, right? And it also depends on us locally, right? What we do in our state, in Rhode Island, in Providence, whether we can actually meet our targets and exceed our targets for reducing emissions. So we're here, right, to say that we're determined as Rhode Islanders to push our state and our city to do more on climate change, to push our federal government and the Trump administration to be good for its promises that the United States has made, both to reduce our emissions and to provide funding to the developing countries, right, that are suffering first and worst from climate change, like from sea level rise. And we chose this location. Does somebody else want to describe why we chose this location?